Good morning, gardening friends. This is part 2 of my irrigation system. It is now Sunday, June 24th, at a little bit before noon, so it is still technically morning. What we are looking at is the bucket that I was using as my test bucket, and that has been holding that same amount of water since yesterday at about 12:40. So we got about another 40 minutes to go to being 24 hours, and that comes down and goes to the big planter. Well, considering how this appears to actually be working, although one full day without moving is a little suspicious, the air conditioner has turned on and kind of shaken it, so you would think that the water would actually have come out if it needed to, but we'll see. In any case, I've decided to go ahead and move forward with the system a little bit. I need to set up so I can actually water the medium-sized planter and all of the other planters along the railing. And so there's one missing over there. I've actually moved over here to work. And what I've done is I've stuck in a piece of tubing, much like this. That piece of tubing goes in about, if you can imagine it being straight, about halfway, with a barbed connector on the end, so I can then connect it. I've kind of put it in loosely because I may, for this particular one, I'm not sure if I'm going to go straight in or if I'm going to use a T. But in any case, that's sort of preparing the individual box. And then what I can do is I can turn the box around. Let's see if I can do this. Okay. So I can turn it around so you won't even see the fact that there's a watering system built into this, and that'll be towards the wall, so nobody will ever really be able to see it. So then the question is what to do for a water source. I've got a lot of stuff to be watered, a lot of plants to be watered, so we're moving on to the old, maybe we shouldn't advertise for them, but the orange bucket, if you will. You can get the orange bucket or the blue bucket or the silver bucket, depending on where you go shopping. Maybe there's another color. Actually, they have a white bucket too here, but inside, you can see at the bottom I've drilled a hole and I've put in a barbed connector. But the one thing is, with the more solid, this is a more solid, more rigid plastic than what I have up there, which seems to have held up nicely even though it was just sort of a quick test. But this one I want to make it a little bit more waterproof, so what I'm actually going to do is use the hot glue gun down there. Now there's the drill I made the hole with, but there's a glue gun. What I'm actually going to do is put a dab of glue in there. I'm actually going to pull that barbed connector out, put a little bit of glue, and then stick it in, and that should seal it. So that's how I plan on creating my water source, and now I can put up to 5 gallons, which should keep it watered for at least a couple of days. Okay, now I could have done this one of two ways. What I did was I put, if you can envision, this is the barbed connector itself. This is, I mean, there's actually one in there, but here's another one. And if you can imagine the right side of that connector, I put a dab around near the collar in the middle there, for lack of a better term. I don't know what they actually call it, but I put a dab of glue all the way around and then just jammed it in there. And when I jammed it in there, that made the glue kind of squeeze around it, which should have created a pretty effective seal. The other way I could have done it would have been to put a whole bunch of glue around the hole and then tried to stick it through, but in doing that I might actually clog the tip with some of the glue. So by doing it this way I ensure that I don't clog the tip. So now it's time to do a little water test. Alright, heck with the advertising thing. You could all pretty much figure out where the orange bucket comes from. So anyway, we're up to the next stage here. I'm going to do the water test. I put on a little piece of tubing, not much. I just want to be able to get the water far enough away that I can tell that it's actually emptying out the way it should be instead of emptying around the newly cut hole. So here we go. We're going to put in, if you could grab it, roughly a gallon of water. I don't know how smoothly this is going to go with me holding the camera in my left hand. You know what? I'm going to fill it up and I'll come back. Alright, that's close enough to a gallon. And as you can see, it's coming through the tube. It appears it's not coming through here. So we're in good shape. We've managed to seal it. Now it's possible, as I permanently attach a tube at some point, that if I push too hard I could actually break the glue bond there. It's just glue against plastic, so I don't know how well hot glue is going to hold, but it's holding for now. Okay, so now the next step is I've got the long tube, the uncut portion of the tube. I bought 50 feet, and this is what's remaining, but I've got it running from here onto the patio, up and around, and over to there. You can see the black tube coming down, and I put a lot more water in that bucket, and it should eventually, the weight of the water should force its way through the tube and start emptying out here. Alright folks, it took a little bit of tweaking, and the connection there was actually not such a good connection. When I had cut the tubing previously, somehow it had split right at the end there, so it was actually kind of leaking out, which wasn't helping. So I just snipped off like a 1/4 inch and put it back on. It held. The other thing is, instead of running up and over the wall, I ran down this part of the wall. It's inside the patio, ran it outside the wall and down and around, and now it's down here, and it appears to be, see, there you go, you can see it's actually working. I guess one of the keys here is it doesn't like to go too much uphill and downhill, which I guess kind of makes sense. The weight of water is only going to create just so much force. So, but in the end, this whole thing will be kind of lined up nice and straight, so it's probably not going to be as much of an issue. And we'll just let the thing empty out, and I'm going to go have lunch. Oh, and here's what it looks like inside the patio, coming in through the wall, down onto the ground. So it is able to go down and back up a little bit under the weight of the water, but I may find that that bucket only empties out just so far because of that weight and the fact that it has to force it downhill and back up, unless getting it to actually go through has created a siphon effect, in which case it'll pretty much empty out the whole bucket. But we'll see in a little bit. Okay folks, it's 2:43 and I came up with an idea. It's so simple. If it works, it fixes the system. My original intention was to have it being a slow watering system. Why not just have it actually just empty out when you put the water in? The majority reason for putting this whole irrigation system together is so that I can have somebody just put all the water in one bucket, and it takes care of the watering for them. It would have been nice if it would, you know, slowly water over 2 or 3 days. They only have to water every 2 or 3 days. But in this case, you know, if I can just make it so it'll actually water everything, you know, just according to the capacity of the container involved and the tubing. I mean, the tubing itself will slow it down. The tubing will also store some of the water, but we follow it down, it kind of comes around, there's a loop. That may be part of the problem. But all I did was change it so these are not sticking in. They're actually free, so that the water will just empty out at the top, and then eventually the water will just soak in through the soil. What's not happening is the water's not coming down right now, so I got to figure that out, but I'll get back to you in a minute on that one. Okay folks, as usual, things get a little crazy around here, and it's a little before 4, but the water level has not dropped. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and straighten out the tubing so there are no loops in it, and we'll see if that solves the problem. Alright, looks like that was the problem. I've now filled it up again after it came out, and just kind of show you. Well, there's actually nothing coming out of that one, but I can see the water down in here. It's got to be coming out of this one. There you go. And let's see how we're doing. Yep, that one's working. This one's not giving me anything. So there's something wrong between here and here, but I have, basically it looks to me like water with gravity doesn't like to do loop-to-loops, and I got a few of these that are working and a few that aren't. So I'm going to dig into that now, but at least we got something working. Alright folks, it's the next day. It's June 29th at 10:53. After several tests yesterday, I've come to the realization that part of the problem is that with open tubes here, I'll give you, there's an open tube there coming out. With the open tubes, I think what the problem here is that it's not pressure balanced, and that's really hard to do considering this is all gravity fed. I'm not putting actual pressure on it, so what's really happening is that it's just going out the very first few and not making it all the way to the last few. So we need to put some kind of regulator on it, and after going to the home center yesterday and staring at things for a bit, I finally decided I'm going to get these ½ gallon per hour drip pieces and put them on the end of each tube. No, actually this one fell off in here, but so what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and fill up that container with about a gallon. These are ½ gallon per hour and there are 8 of them, so I'm thinking the ½ gallon per hour would be 2 hours, but there's 8 of them, so divide that by 8, so it'll probably drain that system in about 15 minutes. If my calculations are right, and if my understanding of this is right, then basically what it's going to do is just fill all of this piping with water, and then it'll slowly leak out. That way, instead of all coming out path of least resistance at the very first few, it'll actually fill the whole system, and that will help me get everything watered reasonably evenly. So we'll give it a shot, and I'll let you know in a few minutes. Okay, so I started filling this at 10:56, and they are dripping very nicely. Give you a shot. This is one of the end pieces that last night, wasn't giving me much, but you can see how it's dripping out there. I might want to extend those pieces a little bit, get it closer to the center, I don't know. We're just going to let it run, and we're going to see, you know, if the water sort of spreads out or if it all goes right down the middle of the planter there. I know that these drip systems are really intended to be put like right next to each plant, but I have more than one plant in each one of these sections, and it would be cost prohibitive to have multiple emitters on each box and what have you, so we're just going to try and figure out how to make it work. I am a budget gardener. I'm trying to keep the price down, but I have invested a bit more than I really anticipated in here. But anyway, I mean, that's one dripping. Let me show you a couple others. So you can see that one dripping. We can confirm that that one is dripping. This one is dripping. They're all dripping, it looks like, at the same rate, which would be that ½ gallon per hour. That one's dripping, and that one's dripping. I'm quite happy with this, and we'll see if it really takes about 15 minutes if my calculations are right. Alright, so here it is 11:11, 15 minutes later, and I'd say it's about half empty, or half full, if you want to be an optimist. So it's not emptying out quite as fast as I thought. That would be because gravity has something to do with the whole system. So anyway, I mean, it's still dripping nicely. So we'll just let it keep going, and we'll see how long it actually takes. Okay, so it's almost 35 minutes later, and the container is pretty much empty, although they're still dripping. And I have noticed that it's actually dripping down below too. I've got water. So it does look like it's kind of going straight through and not really spreading out. So that's the next sort of battle, figuring that one out. But at least I've got a working system. If I've got plants near the center, they'll do well. We'll have to see. I'm going to have to let this run once a day for a few days and just kind of see what this turns into. So I can see if the plants start to wilt. If they do, then I'll have to actually just water them normally. But we'll see.